Oh boy, time really flies. It's volume 17 and I'm already almost halfway there for volume 18 when it comes to how many new cards have been announced. Today's volume, of course, is the main priority for today's video since it's, finished. And surprisingly, a lot of it is filled with normal monsters which received retrains and are thus a part of the Archetype. So let's get through this 60 card wonder once again, and we start off with some one-offs, 4 archetypes of one-offs. Starting off with the Infernity Queen, the only new card the Infernity's got, and I think they are debuting in this series. I think. No, they're not actually, they had some support, but anyway. Yeah, this is certainly not something and you would want to run in your deck in an era where you can once again run 3 Archfiends. So yeah, you definitely do not want to plague your deck with something like this, so let's just move on. Next up we have the only new card that RDA's got, that being Red Dragon Archfiends of course, Salt Fist. The first and third effects are very nifty shortcuts to some great protection and even more fat damage output, which of course RDA's are all about. The second effect, however, is, for the lack of a better word, stupid. I literally see no point in it. Next up we have the only new Earthbound support card in Earthbound Resonance. This is an okay card, but it has absolutely nothing to do with Earthbounds. It's searchable by Geoglyph if that's what you want and if that's what gives you purpose in life. Next up we have the final one-off card for now, that being the new Battle Guard continuous spell, Battle Guard Echoes. And this would be better if it was a field spell, but it's not all that bad. You run 3 of these at all times and that's that. There's literally nothing else I can add to this. Okay, so the next batch of cards, we have the Fiend Reflection number 1, which is still an OCG exclusive, Fiend Reflection 2, which is not an OCG exclusive, Maiden of the Moonlight, Millennium Shield, Millennium Golem, and Sangenjin. Why am I showing you off these normal monsters? Well, because their retrain are part of the new Exodia support. Yes, you heard that right, Exodia support, if you can believe it. Starting with Millennium Fiend Reflection. This, my friends, is peak pack filler. Next, I actually don't want to spend any more time on this, it's just that bad. Next up we have Millennium Moon Maiden. Clever pun there. It's slightly better than the previous card, but still mostly unplayable. Then we have Millennium Seeker, which was pulled into this new series of Exodia support because they decided to call themselves Millenniums. And yeah, we're gonna have Monster Reborn at 3 before we even see a single copy of this guy see play. Then we have Millennium Scorpion, which is a generic circuit, so naturally you just don't run it. Then we have, back to the new cards again, Shield of the Millennium Dynasty. And so far it's the best out of the new retrains because it searches a very strong card this sub-archetype received. Golem that guards the Millennium Treasures is another one of those retrains, and the last 2 main deck monsters, this guy included, now have a condition of needing to reveal a Millennium Cross in order to be summoned, and this doesn't quite tickle my fancy considering the role of the Millennium Cross, but other than that he's your field searcher, so that's why you run at least 1 or 2 of these. And why the Millennium Cross reveal is bad, we'll just have to get to it and explain it there. Then lastly we have the retrain of Sangenjin, the caveman that awoke after a millennium. This one is your monster searcher, so of course, like the last one, you need to run at least a few of them, 1 or 2 at least. Then we have their new boss monster and the fusion monster, the Phantom Exodia Incarnate. When it comes to summonable Exodia beaters and boss monsters in general, this is by far their best card, especially considering how their fusion spell works, which is the aforementioned Millennium Cross. However, it's also a slight missed opportunity, because it had the potential to be a very innovative retrain of Exodius. The fusion spell would send the Exodia parts to the graveyard and then maybe maybe upon attacking or during the standby phase would shuffle them into the deck or add them to the hand and perform Exodius's win condition. It's far from awful, just a tad shy of a fantastic win condition and a fantastic boss monster for this sub-archetype. Also, I like how its torso and head slightly resemble the Exodia model kit, which came out not too long ago, which I actually bought one at Sphericon this year when I attended it. Maybe I'll start informing my fans to when I'm attending it, so you can all flock to me. I don't know. Anyway, next up we have Millennium Cross, the aforementioned fusion spell. A semi-fusion spell, if you can call it. It's a very interesting fusion of both future fusion and instant fusion at the cost of only being able to summon one specific monster, and it also shuffles itself into the deck instead of going to the graveyard like normal. An imperative 3-off in my opinion for this latest Exodia romp. Next up we have their field spell, the Shrine of Vedju, or how Golem that guards the Millennium Treasures specified it, the Temple of the Stone Slabs. I have no idea which one is the OCG name and which one is the TCG name at this point, since none of these came out. Anyway, yes, this newest playstyle, if you haven't noticed by now, since I haven't been going through these effects all too much, this new Exodia playstyle turns the archetype into Crystal Beasts for some reason, and this field spell is the main reason and main play starter of all of this. So naturally, if you really want to indulge in this Crystal Beast-ish playstyle and focus on the retrains of those normal monsters the most, then yeah, you do need to run at least 2 of these in order to be successful at it, because you have no other options. Next up we have Exodo Blaze. This makes the already beefy Exodia fusion even beefier, but running more than one is not recommended, since you usually want to swing for game when you use it. So yeah. And then the last Exodia card for now, we have Raging Hellfire Exodo Flame. This is one of the best support cards ever made, bar none, because it supports every playstyle Exodia decks have known since day one, and it's the very first card ever to directly search the Exodia parts. That's how far we've come, people. Yeah, sure, it's a bit of a slow effect when you compare it to other searchers we have access to, but it's a start. We could maybe get one day a card that just adds all the parts at once to your hand. You never know. Anyway, now we go back to the one-offs for a little bit, starting off with Detonating Kuriboh, the new Kuriboh support card. And it's a now on-field Rainbow Kuriboh that negates the effects rather than attacks, and if it was a hand trap like Rainbow Kuriboh, I'd call this card an upgrade over Imperm or Effect Veiler, bar none. Next up we have the new Yubel support card, which is a new fusion, Phantom of Yubel. Not only does this thing have the absolute best summoning condition a fusion monster can have, but it also kickstarts your plays in every shape or form. I would run 10 of these if I could. Next up we have the 3 new cards pertaining to the Gold Sarcophagus of Light series of Yugi retrains. Now we have the retrain of Summoned Skull called Archfiend's Arrival. It has good intentions, but it's just a tad too slow even for this iteration of the deck. Next up we have another retrain of Dark Magician, that being Dark Magician the Ebon Sorcerer. Miles better than the last card, since it also fetches back row that mentions Dark Magician and even becomes Dark Magician himself, which is kind of important for some interactions in this deck and for a few tech choices you can rely on. The last card this sub-series received is Dark Magic Mirror Force. This is overall a very nifty lineup of effects for a single normal trap, even though the activation condition could get a tad annoying, still definitely worth running. Next up, the next archetype that received support are Trickstars, with several new cards, starting with Trickstar Hoodie. A neat little extender, even though she supports their fusion lineup a bit more, which is something the deck doesn't tend to focus on all too often, but hey, that's the gimmick of the new support wave, so yeah, and some of the new support cards are very decent, so I would recommend running 2 or 3 of these. Next up we have Trickstar Aqua Angel, and this thing is Reference Incarnate, referencing both Blue Angel and her adopted Ignis companion Aqua. It's also treated as a Marincess card, and besides the fact that her effects are cute and for some reason locked into a once per duel restriction for no reason, it's a fine card to consider if you're cosplaying or role-playing or just want to play Trickstar Marincess build for whatever reason. Anyway, next up we have their new fusion monster, which is Trickstar Band Dramatis or whatever. Anyway, here we have a fusion which has immense potential to give the deck a very interesting playstyle, one that would fix one of its major issues, and that is their completely lackluster performance in the battle phase. So yeah, definitely do run 2 or 3 of these. Next up we have Trickstar Kolchika, which is one of their new Link monsters. It's a Link 1 with arrows pointing down. And we have another card here which synergizes with the non-fusion quite well, with both defense and offense. So yeah, it's by far their best Link 1 so far. Next up we have Trickstar Noble Angel, which is the retrain of Holy Angel. And this retrain basically continues the new fusion focus while being way more oppressive in her reactions to effect damage, and it's definitely a replacement for the original in my opinion. Other than that, the archetype received 2 new trap cards, the first of which being Trickstar Diffusion. I really don't see the reason why they made this into a trap instead of a quick play spell, but it's not bad by any means, just a bit slower than I'd like to. And the last card they received is Maiden of the Blue Tears. While the first effect isn't anything compared to the Solemn Brigade, its second effect is very juicy since it can recover any normal spell from the graveyard or banishment, which makes it an interesting Foolish Burial Goods target. Now we move on to another archetype which received a lot of support. I think besides the Exodia cards, this is the archetype with the most support cards in this volume. And that archetype, of course, is none other than Galaxies. We start off with Galaxy War Drake. This is something that Galaxy players have been yearning for, an extender that can synergize with Photon Thrasher and makes both of them level 8 for Xyz plays. Sadly, it doesn't have 2000 attack, which is weird, which is a weird oversight, but it's not a big deal. Then we have Tachyon Cloud Dragon, and yes, it's the Tachyon subline that received the most support. It ain't exactly a play starter, but it certainly shines in mid to late games, so definitely run 1 or 2 of these. Then we have Schwarzschild something Limit Dragon, and it's a card that Misael used in Zexal, and it wasn't part of any archetype like either the Tachyon lineup or the regular Photon Galaxy lineup, but it's here because it received a retrain. All I'm gonna say about the something dragon is it was an okayish extender for the time, especially by the time Kaijus came out, but nowadays it's entirely replaced by its retrain, which is something Infinity Dragon. Straight upgrade over the original monster, which is the play starter for the archetype now. Well, for their rank 8 builds, at least. And despite having some searchability issues, it's still a beast of a card. Then we move on to their final main deck monster, which is the Galaxy Eyes Tachyon Primal. Another fine piece of support, even though I am highly puzzled by the fact that you can summon him to the opponent's field for reasons unknown. And then we have their only Xyz monster, that being Dragluxian. This is just another version of Draglubian, only a bit more restrictive, and you don't get to keep him on the field unlike Draglubian, so run by preference in my opinion. And we have their spell and trap lineup, starting off with a quick play Tachyon Spiral of Destruction. It's fine, nothing special. The first effect was clearly designed to work with Numeron Force or Dark Ruler No More, cards you will naturally be running, so it's fine. So yeah, it'll mostly be live. Mostly. Anyway, next up we have the newest card that was revealed just minutes before I started recording this, the 7th Tachyon. It's a solid searcher both in and out of its archetype, so definitely run at least 2 of these. And the last card they have is Lord of the Tachyon Galaxy. Like Tachyon Transmigration, a fantastic hand trap locked behind the fact that we once again need a Tachyon Dragon monster on the field to do it, which is easier now than it was then, but it's still worth complaining. Oh boy, now we go on to Gimmick Puppets making their debut on this series with one of the most interesting support waves thus far. And yes, let's just get into it, starting with Gimmick Puppet Little Soldiers. This little health spawn right here is a 1-card FTK immune to most hand traps. How exactly? We'll get there. Next up we have Gimmick Puppet Bloody Doll. Not only a Sinister Serpent 2.0, but it also makes hellish boards with its impressive array of abilities, in addition to being a machine dupe target, which is disgusting in all the right ways. The last main deck monster they received is Gimmick Puppet Cattle Scream. While not as crazy as the other 2 monsters, it still provides some impressive utility to the archetype. Now we move on to their Xyz monsters. First up we have Gimmick Puppet Fantasix Machina. A bit unassuming at first, but on a closer inspection it's the bread of the Gimmick Puppet FTK. As for the butter, we turn to Chaos Xyz Gimmick Puppet Fanatix Machina. All of the special summoning of the Xyz monsters to the opponent's side of the field now makes sense, as this completes the freaky trio along with Giant Grinder and Dark Strings, which utterly demolish the opponent's life points with the tiniest of setup. Then we have the card which is responsible for making these things immune to most hand traps, Mansion of the Underworld Dolls. This will either become the new standard for field spells, which is very likely considering how Tempais function in the main phase, or will be slapped by the ban list faster than you can unban Last Will. Absolutely terrifying. You play 3 of these and never think about playing any less than that. The end. Oh, not exactly the end, because they still have the normal trap serviced puppet. It isn't awful, it's just it doesn't help all that much with the FTK, especially the first effect, but it's still a decent one-off since the Xyz monsters, well, primarily Fanatix Machina can search it along with Perform Puppet, so yeah, which is nowhere near as strong compared to this thing. Anyway, now we move on to another archetype with a bunch of different cards for support, and we're actually nearing the end, where I'm actually doing this quite fast. And that archetype are the XYZ Union monsters, which received retrains, starting with X Cross Cannon. It's a very long awaited retrain of X Head Cannon, and even though it's not a Union himself, which is annoying, but you can still make him work for the most part. Then we have Y Dragon Yearhead. They took the original monster and simply swapped the attack boost for that search on special summon, which is a fair trade in my book. Then we have Z Zillion Tank as their last main deck monster, and same thing as the last monster, the difference being the place from where it fetches the other pieces. Then we have Quick Play, out of nowhere, Enemy Controller. Despite being the only quick effect monster stealing effect, it's heavily power crept, and the reason I'm talking about this is because Enemy Controller received a retrain in form of Union Controller, which is a fusion monster, if you can believe it. Yeah, I think this is the first time I'm encountering that a spell card received a retrain in form of a monster card. Well, anyway, I could be wrong, but here, well, let's focus on this card instead. Anyway, they had the right idea with this one as a fairly generic Union support fusion monster. However, making it require the XYZ monsters is kinda annoying for hybrid builds, so yeah, it's a bit of a bummer. Then we have the long-awaited retrain of XYZ Dragon Cannon, XYZ Hyper Dragon Cannon. The only complaint I have with this guy is the fact that its pop effect doesn't work on your turn. But other than that, it's exactly what you'd expect from this kind of monster in 2024. Lastly, we have their normal spell, Union Activation. I'm really mixed on this one. They give the old monster some well-deserved retrains, but then make a search card that requires you to still run the old monsters in addition to the new. So yeah, and the second effect is only there to tie them to armed dragons and ojamas, I guess, because I literally see no place for this effect as the archetype, at least in the main deck and the extra deck mostly, department does not have any monsters with 3000 or more attacks. So yeah, very confused, unless that is supposed to be the armed dragon and ojama tie-in. Anyway, last archetype to receive two new cards worth of support is the Memento archetype, starting with Memento and Mystical Sheep, which is based on Mystical Sheep number 2. It's fine, it essentially aims to punish your opponent for going gung-ho with pops via card effects, and while I would like it if it could fuse away normally as well, it's still a nice addition. Their final monster is Mementomictilican something. I can't read. Teshtulika Combined Conqueror. I'm just gonna call him Combined Conqueror because look at it. Anyway, once more, we have a very good boss monster and a play enabler here, I might add. Sets up the graveyard, destroys both your and your opponent's field, making you plus, and you can even fetch the field spell from the graveyard. So yeah, run any number of these. And that does it for volume 17. Yeah, I'm getting better and better at just blazing through these. And I can't believe I already have 24 cards ready for the next volume, which will be 18 and come out probably next month if they keep adding these new cards in the same vein and in the same speed that they've been adding them so far. But anyway, that was fun. I'm not too excited. Well, the Exodia support, like mainly the fusion monster and the fusion spell are my favorites so far, because other than that I wasn't particularly blown away. Well, the gimmick puppet FTK is also pretty neat in a way, but it could definitely make some terrorizing changes on the ban list whenever that one might drop, because the last one that we got is still relatively fresh. But we'll see how the new gimmick puppet decks spark up in prices when it comes to the FTK lineup. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching this video. Stay tuned for more videos, and updates. Have yourselves a great day, and I will see you all next time.